I stopped breathing. The tray of medicine in my hands didn't rattle, didn't shake, because my entire body had turned to absolute stone. I was standing in the doorway of the master suite, the room I had entered every single morning for the last 6 months. It was a room of shadows, of silence, of the heavy, antiseptic smell of sickness. It was supposed to be the room where a broken man lay in a bed he couldn't leave, staring at a ceiling he couldn't see. But the bed was empty. The sheets were thrown back. And standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, bathed in the pale, blue light of the moon, was a man. He was tall. Even from the back, I could see the power in his shoulders, the way the silk of his black shirt stretched across a back that was supposed to be atrophied and weak. His hair, that distinct, shocking platinum blonde that almost looked silver in this light, glowed against the darkness. He wasn't leaning on anything. He wasn't struggling. He was standing with his hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the city lights of Seoul like he owned them. Like he was a king surveying a kingdom he was supposed to be exiled from. My brain couldn't process it. My patient. Park Jin-woo. The man whose limbs I had massaged every day to keep the blood flowing. The man whose motionless body I had bathed with warm water and soft sponges while humming quiet songs to fill the silence. The man the doctors said was in a persistent vegetative state after the accident. He was standing. "Mr. Park?" I whispered. The name came out like a ghost. He didn't jump. He didn't gasp or scramble back to bed to hide his secret. He just turned. Slowly. Deliberately. When his face came into the light, my heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. His eyes were open. Sharp. Alert. There was no fog, no vacancy. They were dark, calculating, and terrifyingly focused. Right on me. He raised a finger to his lips. Shoo. The tray slipped from my fingers. Before it could hit the floor and shatter the silence of the mansion, he moved. He moved faster than anyone I had ever seen, a blur of motion that shouldn't be possible for a man who hadn't walked in half a year. He caught the tray inches from the ground, his movements fluid and silent. He set it down on the side table without a sound, then straightened up, towering over me. "Abigail," he said. His voice was deep. It was rough from disuse, like gravel grinding together, but it sent a shiver straight down my spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with shock. He knew my name. He had never spoken it. I thought he didn't even know I existed. "You can walk," I stammered, backing up until my shoulders hit the doorframe. You can talk." "You're not." "I'm not," he finished for me. He took a step closer. I saw the tattoos peeking out from the collar of his shirt, the black ink snakes that I knew curled down his chest, the ones I had traced with a soapy washcloth, wondering who he had been before the silence took him. "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why lie? For 6 months? I took care of you. I talked to you. I poured my heart out to you because I thought you couldn't hear me." He looked down at me, his expression unreadable, guarded. "I know," he said softly. "I heard everything, Abigail. Every word." The humiliation hit me like a physical slap. I had told him everything. My loneliness. My failures in love. How I felt invisible in this massive city, a black woman trying to find her footing in a place where she stood out but was rarely truly seen. I had cried by his bedside. I held his limp hand and prayed for him. And he had been awake. Watching. Listening. "You're a monster," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. I turned to grab the door handle. "I'm leaving. I'm calling the agency, and I'm..." His hand slammed against the door, right next to my head. He didn't touch me, but he boxed me in. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. I could smell the scent I knew so well, sandalwood and something uniquely him, something cool and clean. "You can't leave," he said, the roughness in his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Not tonight. If you walk out that door, Abigail, you will die." I stared at him, my breath hitching. "What?" "There are men outside the gate," he said, his eyes scanning my face, searching for something. They've been watching the house for 3 days. They are waiting for a sign that I am weak. Or a sign that I am recovering. Either way, they are coming to finish the job they started 6 months ago. And if they see you leave, they will take you just to get to me. My knees felt weak. I'm just a nurse. You are the only person who knows I'm awake, he cut in. Which makes you the most dangerous person in the world to them. And the most important person in the world to me. He pulled back slightly, giving me room to breathe, but his gaze pinned me in place. I need you to trust me, he said. Just for tonight. Before we go any further into this night that changed my life forever, if you love stories about secrets, dangerous romance, and finding love where you least expect it, please take a second to hit that like button. Drop a comment below. Would you forgive someone who lied to you for 6 months? And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss how this ends. Now, let me tell you how I ended up trapped in a mansion with a fake invalid who was actually a sleeping dragon. My life before that night was quiet. Too quiet. I'm Abigail Johnson. I moved here 4 years ago for a change of pace, for the adventure, but mostly to run away from the feeling that I was stuck. Back home, I was the reliable one. The strong one. The one everyone came to for help but no one ever asked, "Are you okay, Abby?" I thought moving across the world would make me the main character of my own life. Instead, I became a background extra. I was a private duty nurse. I was good at my job. I was efficient, gentle, and discreet. People hired me because I could blend into the wallpaper. I wore my scrubs, I kept my hair pulled back in a tight bun, and I did my work. When I got the assignment for Park Jin-woo, the agency was vague. High-profile client, they said. Car accident. Neurological trauma. Complete dependency. The pay was triple my usual rate. I didn't ask questions. I needed the money, and, honestly, I preferred the unconscious patients. They didn't stare at me with pity or confusion. They didn't ask me why a girl like me was here. They just let me care for them. Or so I thought. For 6 months, my routine was the same. I arrived at the estate, a modern, fortress-like mansion on the outskirts of the city, perched on a cliff overlooking the sea, at 7 p.m. I relieved the day nurse, a stern older woman who never spoke more than 3 words to me. I would check his vitals. Stable. Always stable. I would check his feeding tube, his IVs. Then I would begin the evening care. Jin-woo was beautiful. There was no other word for it. Even in his stillness, he had a presence. His features were sharp, his jawline cut from glass. That platinum hair fell over his forehead in a way that made my fingers itch to brush it back. And the tattoos. They were art. A dragon winding down his left arm. Geometric patterns on his right. And that snake on his chest, its head resting right over his heart. I used to talk to him while I worked. It started as a way to keep myself awake during the long, silent nights, but it became therapy. "I had a date today, Mr. Park," I'd said just last week, wiping his arm with a warm cloth. "Well, not a date. Coffee." He spent 20 minutes talking about his ex-girlfriend and then asked if I could help him get a visa. I walked out. I sighed, dipping the cloth back in the water. Why is it so hard to be seen? I'm right here. I'm flesh and blood. But they look right through me. I remembered pausing then, looking at his sleeping face. "You're the best listener I've ever had," I joked sadly. "And you're in a coma." Thinking about that now, standing in the dark with him looming over me, I wanted to die of embarrassment. He had heard that. He had heard me crying over a bad coffee date. He had heard me singing old R&B songs while I danced around the room to keep my circulation going. "The men outside," I said, forcing myself back to the present. I had to focus. I was good in a crisis. That's what nurses do. "Who are they?" "Business partners," Jin-woo said. The way he said the word made it sound like a curse. He walked past me, moving to a control panel on the wall. He punched in a code. Heavy metal shutters began to descend over the massive windows, blocking out the moon, blocking out the view of the city. The room plunged into deeper darkness, lit only by the small bedside lamp. They think I'm incapacitated, he continued, his voice low. That was the point. The accident wasn't an accident, Abigail. Someone cut my brake lines. I survived, obviously. But I knew if I woke up, if I walked out of that hospital, they would just try again. And next time, they won't miss. So you played dead, I said. For 6 months. I played patient, he corrected. He turned to look at me again. The silver hair caught the lamplight. I needed time to find out who ordered the hit. I needed them to get comfortable. To think the threat was gone so they would make a mistake. And did they? Yes, he said. A cold smile touched his lips. It didn't reach his eyes. Tonight. They made their move on my accounts. They think I'm a vegetable, so they're trying to strip the company assets. But to do that, they need my biometric override. Or, they need me dead, officially. Which is why they're outside, I realized. The air in the room felt suddenly thin. They're coming to kill you tonight. Yes. And you stood up. Because I'm not going to let them kill you to get to me, he said. He walked over to the closet, the one I had never opened because his clothes were useless to a bedridden man. He pulled it open. Inside, it wasn't hospital gowns. It was a suit, Kevlar vests, and weapons. I took a step back. Who are you really, Park Jin-woo? He pulled out a black tactical vest and shrugged it on over his silk shirt. The motion caused his shirt to tighten against his chest, outlining the muscles I knew by touch, but had never seen in action. My family owns a shipping conglomerate, he said, checking the magazine of a handgun. Legitimate business. Mostly. But my uncle, he prefers the old ways. Smuggling. Trafficking. I tried to clean it up. He tried to kill me. He tucked the gun into the waistband of his trousers and turned to me. The transformation was complete. The invalid was gone. In his place was a soldier. A warrior. We have to move, he said. The security system is compromised. The shutters will hold them for maybe 10 minutes. We need to get to the safe room in the basement. I can't, I panicked. I need to call the police. The police are on his payroll, Jin-woo said calmly. He reached out and, for the first time since I'd known him, he touched me. His hand wrapped around my upper arm. His grip was firm, warm, and electric. It wasn't the weak, limp hand I had held for months. It was the hand of a man who could crush bone if he wanted to, but he was holding me with a surprising gentleness. Abigail, he said. He said my name like it was a weighty thing, something important. Look at me. I looked up into those dark eyes. I dragged you into this, he said. I am sorry. I never intended for you to be here on the night it went down. But you're here. And I swear to you, in my life, I will not let anyone hurt you. But you have to move. Now. I looked at the door. I looked at the shutters, where I could hear a faint, metallic thudding. They were trying to get in. My fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it, there was something else. Adrenaline. And trust. It was crazy. I should hate him. He had lied to me every single day. But looking at him now, seeing the fierce protection in his eyes, I realized something. For 6 months, I had been talking to a wall. But the wall had been listening. He knew me. He knew who I was. And he was choosing to save me. Okay, I breathed. Okay, let's go. He nodded, a sharp jerk of his chin. Stay behind me. If I say run, you run. You don't look back. You don't wait for me. Understand? I'm not leaving you, I said automatically. He paused. He looked at me, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Then, the corner of his mouth ticked up in the tiniest, almost invisible smile. Stubborn, he muttered. I figured you might be. You argued with a physical therapist for an hour last week about my range of motion. She was doing it wrong, I defended, feeling a blush heat my cheeks. I know, he said. That's why I liked you. He didn't give me time to process that. He pulled me toward the door, not the main door to the hallway, but a hidden panel in the wood paneling of the wall that I had never noticed. He pressed his hand against a sensor, and it clicked open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase going down. Go, he ordered. I stepped into the darkness. He followed, closing the panel behind us. We were plunged into total blackness for a second before emergency strip lights flickered on, casting the stairwell in a red glow. "Move fast," he said, his hand finding the small of my back to guide me. "We have to get to the garage before they breach the perimeter." I thought we were going to a safe room. "Change of plan," he said. "If they have explosives, the safe room is a tomb. We're getting out of here." We ran down the stairs. I was wearing my nursing sneakers, thank God, so I could move quietly. He moved like a shadow, silent and lethal. We reached the bottom level, and he kicked open a door leading to the garage. It was a massive cavern of concrete, filled with cars covered in dust sheets. "Get in," he pointed to a black SUV that wasn't covered. "It's armored." I scrambled into the passenger seat. He vaulted into the driver's side. He didn't need a key. He pressed a button on the dash, and the engine roared to life with a sound like a waking beast. "Buckle up," he commanded. As I clicked the belt, I saw the garage door starting to open. But it wasn't opening because he hit a button. It was being pried open from the outside. Shadows. Men in masks. I saw the glint of metal barrels. "Get down!" Jin-woo roared. He slammed the car into gear. He didn't reverse. He didn't turn around. He floored the gas pedal, driving straight toward the rising garage door, straight toward the men with guns. I screamed and threw my hands over my head. The windshield didn't shatter. The car hit the metal door with a deafening screech of tearing steel, knocking the men aside like bowling pins. We burst out into the cool night air, the tires screeching on the gravel driveway. Gunshots popped behind us, sounds like firecrackers. I heard the thud-thud-thud of bullets hitting the back of the car, but the armored glass held. Jin-woo spun the wheel, drifting the massive car around the fountain, heading for the main gate. "Are you okay?" he shouted over the roar of the engine. I slowly lowered my hands. My heart was beating so fast I felt dizzy. I'm alive." "Good. Keep it that way." He hit a remote on the visor, and the front gates swung open just in time. We shot through them, tearing down the winding cliffside road, leaving the estate and my old, safe, boring life far behind in the dust. I looked over at him. His jaw was set, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He looked like a fallen angel driving a getaway car. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He glanced at me, his eyes dark and intense. "Somewhere no one can find us," he said. "And then, Abigail, we are going to have a very long talk about the last 6 months." The silence in the armored SUV was louder than the gunshots had been. We had been driving for an hour, leaving the neon glow of Seoul behind for the winding, darkened roads of the mountains. The adrenaline that had spiked through my veins was starting to curdle into something else, a thick, nauseating mixture of shock and betrayal. I sat pressed against the passenger door, my arms wrapped tight around myself. I kept stealing glances at him. Park Jin-woo. In the dim light of the dashboard, he looked like a stranger. For 6 months, I had memorized the relaxed lines of his sleeping face. I knew the exact curve of his eyelashes, the way his lips parted slightly when he breathed. But this man? His jaw was clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. His eyes were narrowed, scanning the road with a predatory intensity. His hands, gripping the leather steering wheel, were white-knuckled. And they were shaking. I noticed it when we hit a patch of rough road. A fine, violent tremor in his forearms. "You're hurting," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a nurse's observation. It slipped out before I could stop it. He didn't look at me. "I'm fine." "You're not fine," I snapped, the anger finally finding a crack in the dam. "You haven't walked in 6 months. Or at least, you haven't walked enough. Your muscles are fatigued. You're probably tearing microfibers in your quads just by pressing the gas pedal. You need to pull over. And wait for them to catch us?" He let out a dark, humorless chuckle. "I don't think so, Abigail." "Don't call me that," I whispered. "Don't say my name like we're friends. You don't know me." He swerved the car onto a dirt track, the tires crunching over gravel. I know you take your coffee with 3 sugars, but you only stir it twice because you like the grit at the bottom. I know you hum Amazing Grace when you're nervous. I know you hate the rain because it messes up your hair, but you love the sound of it against the window. I stared at him, my mouth falling open. Stop it. I know you write letters to your mother, but never send them, he continued, his voice softer now, almost hypnotic. Because you don't want her to know how lonely you really are. I said stop. I shouted, the sound tearing through the small space. He slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a halt in front of a looming shadow, a brutalist concrete structure half buried on the side of a mountain. The headlights cut out, plunging us into total darkness. I can't stop, he said quietly in the dark. I can't unknow you, Abigail. For 6 months, you were the only real thing in a world of lies. You were my tether. I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. The humiliation was a hot brand on my skin. Every secret, every tear, every embarrassing dance move I'd done in his room thinking I was alone, he had catalogued it all. Get out, he commanded, his tone shifting back to the soldier. We're here. I fumbled for the door handle, my hands shaking. I stepped out into the biting mountain air. The house was stark, modern, and cold. It looked like a bunker disguised as a luxury villa. No lights were on. Jin-woo got out slowly. I watched him. He held onto the door frame for a second too long. When he took a step, his leg buckled. Instinct moved faster than pride. I was there before he hit the ground, wedging my shoulder under his arm. He was heavy, solid muscle and dead weight, and the heat coming off his body was intense. I got you, I grunted, bracing my feet. I don't need. Shut up, I hissed. You're the Mafia prince or whatever, fine. But right now, you're a patient with acute muscle fatigue and likely dehydration. So shut up and lean on me. He hesitated, his body tense against mine. Then, slowly, he exhaled and let his weight settle onto me. For a moment, we were tangled together in the dark, his arm draped over my shoulders, my arm wrapped around his waist. I could feel the hardness of the gun tucked into his waistband, a reminder of the danger, but I could also feel the rapid, thudding beat of his heart against his ribs. It was beating as fast as mine. We hobbled toward the house. He punched a code into a keypad, and the heavy door hissed open. The inside was freezing. The air smelled stale, like dust and disuse. He led me, or I led him, to a massive living room where a leather couch sat shrouded in a white sheet. He collapsed onto it, dragging the sheet down with him. He leaned his head back, closing his eyes. His skin was pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. The platinum hair was plastered to his temple. Water, I said. Where's the kitchen? Down the hall. To the left. Tap water is safe. There are rations in the pantry. I left him there. I needed the distance. I found the kitchen, sleek and soulless, and filled a glass with water. My hands were trembling so badly that water sloshed over the rim. I drank it in one gulp, then filled another for him. When I came back, he had shrugged off the tactical vest. It lay on the floor like shed skin. He was unbuttoning his silk shirt, his fingers fumbling with the buttons. Let me, I said, setting the water down. I swatted his hands away. It was automatic. Muscle memory. I had undressed him hundreds of times for his sponge baths. But this was different. Before, he had been a doll. An object. Now, as my fingers undid the buttons, I could feel his eyes on my face. Watching. I parted the shirt. The tattoo of the snake on his chest seemed to breathe with him. But I wasn't looking at the ink. I was looking at the bruising blooming across his ribs, likely from the vest, or from the strain of moving so violently after months of stillness. You're going to be in agony tomorrow, I murmured, pressing my fingers gently against his sternum to check for swelling. His hand shot up and grabbed my wrist. The contact was electric. It sent a shockwave straight to my toes. I froze, looking down at him. His eyes were open, dark pools of exhaustion and something else, something hungry. Why didn't you run? He asked. His voice was a low rumble. In the garage. You could have run out the side door while I distracted them. And let you die? I pulled my wrist back, but he didn't let go. His thumb traced the pulse point on the inside of my wrist. It was racing. He had to feel it. I'm a liar, Abigail. I deceived you. I put a target on your back. Why save me? Because I'm a nurse, I said, my voice shaky. I save lives. Even the lives of idiots. He stared at me for a long beat. Then, slowly, he released my wrist. Thank you. I stepped back, putting distance between us. Don't thank me. Explain to me. You said you were cleaning up the business. You said your uncle tried to kill you. Start talking. Because if I'm going to die for this, I want to know what I'm dying for. He sat up, wincing as his abdominal muscles protested. He took a sip of the water I'd brought, his throat working as he swallowed. My uncle, Park Jin-woo, runs the Red Dragon Syndicate, Jin-woo began, his voice gathering strength. My father built the legitimate shipping side. He wanted to go straight. Jin-woo had him killed 5 years ago. It looked like a heart attack. I gasped softly. I was 22, Jin-woo said, staring at the floor. I inherited the empire. I played the part of the dutiful nephew. I let Jin-woo think I was just a figurehead, a pretty face to put on magazine covers while he ran the drugs and the weapons through my ships. But I was documenting everything. He looked up at me. I was building a case. I had servers full of evidence. I was going to hand it all to the International Crimes Division. The night of my accident, I was on my way to the meeting. Jin-woo found out. He cut my brakes. And the last 6 months? I asked, crossing my arms to stop myself from shivering. Recovery, he said. The crash was real. The spinal trauma was real. I was paralyzed, Abigail. For the first 2 months. I couldn't move. I was trapped in my own body, screaming on the inside. My heart softened, just a fraction. The doctors said it was permanent. I paid the doctors to say it was permanent, he corrected. Once the feeling started coming back in my toes, I knew I had an advantage. If Jin-woo thought I was a vegetable, he would get sloppy. He would stop trying to kill me and focus on stealing the company. So I waited. I laid in that bed, staring at the ceiling, training my mind. And at night, when the house was empty, I trained my body. Micro-movements. Isometric exercises. But the nurses. The day nurse is on Jin-woo's payroll, he said casually. She reports everything to him. That's why I never moved when she was there. I never showed a flicker of life. And me? I asked, the hurt resurfacing. Am I on his payroll too? Jin-woo's expression changed. The hardness melted away, leaving something raw and vulnerable. No, he said softly. You were an agency hire. A random variable. Jin-woo didn't care about the night shift. He thought no one watched the vegetable at night. He tried to stand, groaning as his legs protested. I instinctively stepped forward to help him, but he held up a hand. He forced himself upright, swaying slightly. You were the glitch in the plan, Abigail. You weren't supposed to care. You were supposed to change the 4 bags and check the monitors and leave. But you. He took a step toward me. You talked to me. You touched me with hands that weren't cold. You read to me. He was close now. Too close. I backed up until I hit the cold kitchen island. You read me poetry, he whispered. Pablo Neruda. Do you remember? I swallowed hard. I remembered. I had read Sonnet 17. I had read it because I was lonely and I liked the sound of the words in the empty room. I love you as certain dark things are to be loved, he quoted, his accent wrapping around the English words, making them sound like a prayer. In secret, between the shadow and the soul. Tears pricked my eyes. That's not fair. It kept me sane, he said intensely. Your voice. Your stories about your sister back in Nigeria. Your rants about the rainy season. You were the only light in that room. And when I realized Jin-woo was making his move tonight, when I saw the team moving into position on the security feeds, I knew I couldn't leave you there. I could have escaped alone. It would have been cleaner. Easier. He reached out, his hand hovering near my face, but he didn't touch me. But the thought of them hurting you. His jaw tightened. It was unacceptable. So, what happens now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We're hiding in a bunker. Your uncle wants us dead. You can barely walk. Now, he said, stepping back and looking around the cold, empty room. We survive. I have a secure terminal here. I can access the evidence. But I need to decrypt it. It will take time. Until then, we are ghosts. He looked at me, his gaze traveling down to my scrubs, then back to my face. I'm sorry, Abigail. I have ruined your life. You saved it, I reminded him, though I wasn't sure which one felt more true right now. Go upstairs, he said, turning away, dismissing the moment. Pick a room. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer. I'll take the couch. I need to monitor the perimeter sensors. You need to sleep, I argued. You're exhausted. I'll sleep when we're dead, he muttered. I watched him limp back to the couch, the proud, powerful man reduced to a stubborn, broken figure in the dark. I wanted to leave him there. I wanted to go upstairs, lock the door, and cry until I fell asleep. But I was a nurse. And he was a patient. And beneath the anger, beneath the fear, there was that pull. That magnetic, terrifying pull that had started when he was just a body in a bed, and I was a voice in the dark. I walked over to the linen closet I had seen in the hall. I grabbed a blanket. I walked back to the living room. He was sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at a tablet screen, his face illuminated by the blue light. He looked lonely. I draped the blanket over his shoulders. He froze. He didn't look up, but his hand came up to grip the edge of the fleece. Thank you, he said gruffly. Don't die on my watch, Park Jin-woo, I said softly. It looks bad on my resume. I turned and walked toward the stairs, feeling his eyes burning into my back every step of the way. I knew, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that locking the door wouldn't keep him out. Not really. Because he was already inside. He had been inside my head for 6 months. And now, God help me, he was starting to get under my skin. I woke up to the smell of dust and the blinding glare of high-altitude sunlight hitting unfamiliar concrete. For a split second, I forgot. I reached for my phone to check the time, thinking I had to catch the bus to the estate. Then the silence hit me. It wasn't the quiet of my studio apartment. It was the dead, pressurized silence of a bunker. Memory crashed back in like a wave. The gunshots. The escape. Jin-woo standing in the moonlight. I sat up, clutching the duvet to my chest. I was in a guest room that looked more like a prison cell designed by a minimalist architect. Gray walls. Gray bed. No pictures. I looked at the door. I hadn't locked it. I swung my legs out of bed. My body ached, not from exercise, but from tension. I felt gritty, unwashed, and completely out of my element. I walked to the small ensuite bathroom. The mirror showed me the truth. My braids were frizzy at the roots, my eyes were puffy, and I was still wearing my nursing scrubs, now wrinkled and stained with grease from the car door. You look like a disaster, Abby, I whispered to my reflection. But there was no time for vanity. My nurse brain was already ticking over. Patient status. Jin-woo had pushed his atrophied body beyond the breaking point last night. Adrenaline is a powerful drug, but the crash is always brutal. I splashed cold water on my face, smoothed back my hair as best I could, and opened the door. The house was silent. I walked down the floating metal staircase, my sneakers squeaking on the steps. Jin-woo. I called out softly. No answer. I found him in the living room, exactly where I had left him. But he wasn't sleeping. He was sitting on the floor, surrounded by 3 laptops and a tangle of cables he must have dug out of storage. The white sheet from the couch was kicked aside. He was shirtless, and the morning light poured over him, illuminating every inch of the tattoos that covered his torso. The dragon on his arm. The geometric lines. And the bruising. My breath caught. His ribs were a map of purple and angry red. His skin was pale, almost translucent, covered in a sheen of cold sweat. His hands were flying across a keyboard, but they were shaking so badly he had to keep correcting his typos. "You didn't sleep," I said, stepping into the room. He didn't look up. "Decryption takes time. The encryption keys on Sangchul's servers rotate every 12 hours. I have to bypass the firewall before the next rotation or we lose the window." "You're shaking," I said, walking closer. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're going into shock." I knelt beside him. Up close, the heat radiating off him was alarming. "Jin-woo, look at me." He kept typing. "Not now, Abigail." "Yes, now." I reached out and slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He froze. Slowly, he turned his head to look at me. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. There was a flash of anger in them, the imperious look of a CEO who wasn't used to being disobeyed. "Open it," he growled. "No," I said, holding my hand over the lid. "I spent 6 months keeping you alive. I'm not going to watch you kill yourself in a day because you're too stubborn to drink water or eat food." We stared at each other. A battle of wills. He was powerful, dangerous, a man who could take down armed guards. But right now, I was the one with the strength. "I need to finish this," he said, his voice cracking. "If I don't, we can't leverage a deal. We're sitting ducks." "You can't finish anything if you pass out," I countered. 5 minutes. You eat. You drink. Then you can type." He stared at me for another second, then the fight drained out of him. He slumped back against the couch, closing his eyes. "Fine," he whispered. 5 minutes. I scrambled up and went to the kitchen. I found a stash of instant ramen and dried seaweed in the pantry, survival food. I boiled water, my hands moving on autopilot. I made 2 bowls, adding some dried spices I found to make it palatable. When I came back, he hadn't moved. I set the bowl on the floor next to him. "Eat," I ordered. He opened one eye. "You're very bossy when you're not in uniform." I was bossy in uniform too, I said, sitting cross-legged opposite him with my own bowl. "You were just too unconscious to notice." He let out a short, dry laugh. He picked up the chopsticks. His hand trembled, but he managed to get noodles to his mouth. As the warmth of the food hit his stomach, some color returned to his cheeks. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The tension in the room shifted from dangerous to something domestic. "Strange." "Why me?" I asked suddenly. He paused, noodles halfway to his mouth. "What?" "You said I was the glitch. That I wasn't supposed to care. But lots of nurses care. Why did you choose to save me?" "Really?" He set the bowl down slowly. He looked at me, really looked at me. His gaze traveled over my face, resting on my eyes, then my lips, then back to my eyes. It felt like a physical touch. "Because you didn't look at me like a job," he said quietly. "Or a tragedy." He leaned back, wincing as his back hit the couch. "Everyone who visited me, my lawyers, the doctors, even Sangchul, they looked at me and saw a corpse. Or a bank account. But you looked at me like I was a man. You scolded me for not eating enough. You told me jokes and got mad when I didn't laugh. You read me poetry." He shifted his leg, grimacing in pain. "And," he added, his voice dropping lower, "I liked your voice. It has a rhythm. When you hummed, it was the only thing that stopped the panic attacks." My heart did a traitorous flip. "Panic attacks?" "Being trapped in your own body is terrifying," he admitted. "There were nights I wanted to scream, to break the act. But then you would come in. You would smell like vanilla and cocoa butter. And you would start humming some song about a sweetest taboo or no ordinary love. I buried my face in my hands. "Sod. You listened to me sing Sod." "I liked it," he said. I looked up through my fingers. He was smiling. A real smile this time. It transformed his face, softening the sharp angles, making him look younger, less like a Mafia prince and more like the man I had imagined him to be. "You're impossible," I muttered, dropping my hands. "I've been told." He tried to shift his position again, but his leg seized up. He hissed in pain, grabbing his thigh. A spasm was rocking through his quad muscle, visible even under the skin. Cramp, he gritted out. Let me, I said. I didn't wait for permission. I crawled over to him. Abigail, don't. Shoo. I pushed his hand away. I know the muscle groups better than you do. I put my hands on his leg. The muscle was rock hard, locked in a painful contraction. I began to knead it, digging my thumbs in deep, working against the spasm. His skin was hot. My hands were cool. The contrast sent a jolt through me. He groaned, his head falling back against the couch. It was a sound of pain, but it was low and guttural, and it made my stomach tighten in a way that had nothing to do with nursing. Breathe, I instructed, keeping my voice steady even though my pulse was racing. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. I worked the knot out, my hands moving up his thigh, feeling the power of the muscle beneath the atrophy. He was strong. So incredibly strong. Better? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked down at me. We were inches apart. My hands were still on his leg. His chest was rising and falling rapidly. Yes, he breathed. The air between us crackled. It was thick, heavy with everything we hadn't said for 6 months. He reached out, his hand hesitating before his fingers grazed my cheek. Abigail, he murmured. I leaned into his touch instinctively. I was so tired of being alone. So tired of being strong. What happens to us? I asked. If we get out of this? His thumb brushed my lower lip. His eyes darkened. I don't know. But I know I can't let you go. Not now. He started to lean in. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Was this happening? Here, on the floor of a cold bunker over empty ramen bowls? Beep. 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 The sound was shrill and piercing. It cut through the moment like a knife. Jin-woo pulled back instantly, the soldier returning in a split second. He twisted toward the laptops. What is it? I asked, scrambling back, feeling cold where his hand had been. Perimeter alert, he said, his fingers flying across the keys. Motion sensor in Sector 4. The lower ridge. Is it them? I asked, terror replacing the desire. Did they find us? He stared at the screen, his brow furrowed. It's small. A deer, maybe? Or a drone. He tapped a few more keys, bringing up a grainy black and white feed. Nothing but trees and wind. I don't like it, he muttered. Sangchul doesn't make mistakes. If he found us, he wouldn't send a scout. He would send a missile. He turned to me. We need to secure the lower entrance. The manual lock is rusted. I need to weld it shut. You can barely walk, I reminded him. Then you'll have to help me carry the gear, he said, standing up. He swayed, but he didn't fall. He looked at me, the intensity back in his eyes. Are you with me? I stood up, smoothing my scrubs. I'm with you. We spent the next 2 hours turning the bunker into a fortress. He showed me how to mix the chemical compounds for the door seals. I watched him work, amazed by his focus. He was in pain, I could see it in the tight line of his mouth, but he didn't stop. By the time we were done, it was late afternoon. The sun was dipping behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the living room. We were exhausted. We sat on the couch, not touching, but close enough that I could feel his warmth. I need to shower, I said, feeling grimy. I feel gross. You look beautiful, he said. He said it so simply. No fanfare. No hesitation. I looked at him, surprised. I look like a mess. My hair is, it's doing its own thing. I reached up to touch the frizz at my temples, self-conscious. In Korea, everyone looked perfect. Polished. Sleek. I always felt too loud, too big, too textured. Jin-woo reached out and took my hand, pulling it away from my hair. It's like a crown, he said softly. The first time I saw you, really saw you, you had it loose. It was like a halo. I wanted to touch it. My throat went tight. You can't just say things like that. Why not? Because, I whispered. Because I might believe you. Good, he said. Believe me. He was looking at me with that intensity again, that focus that made me feel like the only person in the world. Then, the laptop chimed. Not an alarm this time. A message notification. Jin-woo stiffened. He lunged for the computer. What? I asked, sensing the shift in the air. He stared at the screen, his face draining of color. It's not an alarm, he said, his voice hollow. It's a live stream link. From who? From Sangchul. He clicked the link. The screen flickered to life. I gasped, my hands flying to my mouth. The image was of a woman. She was tied to a chair in a room I didn't recognize. She was crying, terrified. Who is that? I asked, though a sick feeling was already churning in my stomach. Jin-woo didn't answer. He turned up the volume. A voice, distorted and metallic, came through the speakers. Hello, nephew. I know you're watching. You thought you could disappear? You thought you could take your little nurse and play house in the mountains. The camera zoomed in on the woman's face. We couldn't find you. But we found her. The woman looked at the camera and screamed. Abby, help me. I screamed. I fell to my knees, clutching the edge of the coffee table. It was my sister. My baby sister. Who was supposed to be safe in London at university. You have 24 hours to return the encryption keys and surrender yourself, Jin-woo, the voice said. Or Abigail's sister pays the price for your freedom. The screen went black. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I looked at Jin-woo. He was staring at the blank screen, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. No, I whispered, the tears finally spilling over. No. Jin-woo turned to me. His eyes were no longer human. They were the eyes of a dragon that had just been woken up. They made a mistake, he said, his voice so cold it made the room freeze. They touched the family. He stood up, ignoring the pain in his legs, ignoring the weakness. Pack your bag, Abigail, he said. We're going back to Seoul. And we are going to burn them to the ground. If you're hooked and terrified for Abigail's sister, smash that like button right now. Do you think they're walking into a trap? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the explosive next part. I couldn't breathe. The air in the bunker felt like it had turned into solid glass, slicing my throat every time I tried to inhale. My sister. My baby sister, Chioma. She was supposed to be in her dorm room in London, complaining about the rain and eating jollof rice from a microwave container. She wasn't supposed to be tied to a chair. She wasn't supposed to be screaming my name. I have to call her, I gasped, fumbling for my phone, my fingers numb and useless. I have to. Abigail. Jin-woo's voice was sharp. He didn't shout, but the command in his tone cut through the panic like a blade. He grabbed my wrists, stopping my frantic movements. Look at me, he ordered. They have her. I screamed, the sob finally ripping out of my chest. They have Chioma. Because of me. Because I helped you. Yes, he said. He didn't flinch. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He owned it. They have her because of me. This is my sin. But panic will not save her. Action will. He squeezed my wrists, his dark eyes locking onto mine with a ferocity that was almost frightening. Listen to me. Sangchul expects us to crumble. He expects me to hand over the encryption keys and surrender. If I do that, he kills me. He kills you. And he kills your sister to tie up the loose ends. That is how he operates. I stared at him, tears streaming down my face. Then what do? We can't just let her die. We don't, he said. We go to the exchange. But we don't surrender. We are going to take the crown. He released my wrists and turned, limping toward the wall of weapons he had unlocked earlier. Get up, Abigail. We have work to do. The drive back to Seoul was a blur of motion and terror. The night had fallen completely, turning the mountains into jagged silhouettes against a starless sky. Jin-woo drove with a terrifying precision, the speedometer climbing higher than I had ever seen. He was on the phone, a burner he had dug out of a drawer, speaking in rapid-fire Korean. I caught words like mobilize, shadow unit, and tonight. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching the door handle, my mind racing. I was a nurse. I healed people. I fixed broken bones and soothed fevers. I didn't go to war. But looking at the man beside me, his profile illuminated by the passing streetlights, his jaw set in stone, I realized I was already at war. We didn't go back to the estate. We went to the heart of the city, to a sleek, high-rise apartment building in Gangnam that looked like a shard of black crystal. Safe house, Jin-woo explained as he drove into the private underground garage. Sang-chul doesn't know about this one. It's under a shell company. We took the private elevator to the penthouse. The doors opened into a space that was vast, luxurious, and cold. White marble floors. Black leather furniture. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Go to the master bedroom, Jin-woo said, pointing down a hallway. In the closet, you'll find clothes. Something formal. Something intimidating. Clothes. I stared at him. Jin-woo, my sister is. We are going to the Obsidian, he cut in. It's Sang-chul's private club. It's where he holds court. We cannot walk in there looking like refugees. We have to walk in looking like we own the place. Perception is everything, Abigail. If you look weak, they will eat you alive. He turned and walked toward the study, his limp less pronounced now, fueled by pure adrenaline. I need 5 minutes to set up the data transfer trap. Go. I ran to the bedroom. The closet was massive, filled with rows of designer suits and, strangely, women's evening wear. I didn't ask why. I didn't care. I stripped off my filthy scrubs, the uniform of my old life, and threw them on the floor. I scanned the rack. Nothing pink. Nothing floral. I needed armor. I found a dress in the back. It was a deep, midnight blue velvet, almost black. Long sleeves. High neck. But the back was open, and it had a slit that went up to my thigh. It was elegant, severe, and commanding. I pulled it on. It fits like a second skin. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the tired nurse who blended into the wallpaper. She was tall. Her shoulders were strong. The dark velvet made my skin glow. I pulled my hair out of its messy bun. My braids fell around my shoulders. I didn't try to tame them. I let them be big. I let them take up space. I found a pair of black heels. I stepped into them, adding 3 inches to my height. When I walked back out into the living room, Jin-woo was waiting. He had changed too. He was wearing a black bespoke suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. The crisp white shirt contrasted with his tan skin and that shock of platinum hair. He had covered the tattoos, but the energy of them was still there, buzzing beneath the fabric. He was checking the magazine of a sleek, silver handgun. He looked up. His hands stilled. The gun lowered slowly to his side. For a long, heavy silence, he didn't say a word. He just looked at me. His gaze started at my heels, traveled up the slit of the dress, lingered on the curve of my waist, and finally met my eyes. The air in the room suddenly felt very thin. You said to look intimidating, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I said intimidating, he murmured, walking toward me. Not devastating. He stopped a foot away. The smell of expensive cologne and gun oil clung to him. He reached out and tucked a loose braid behind my ear, his fingers brushing the sensitive skin of my neck. You look like a queen, he said softly. My queen. My heart hammered against my ribs. I'm terrified, Jin-woo. I'm shaking. Good, he said. Fear keeps you sharp. But don't let them see it. When we walk through those doors, you are not the nurse. You are the woman who brought Park Jin-woo back from the dead. You are the only thing in that room that matters. He leaned in, pressing his forehead against mine for a brief second. A transfer of strength. Let's go get your sister. The Obsidian was a fortress of glass and neon in the center of Seoul's nightlife district. The bass from the club thrummed in the pavement, vibrating up through the soles of my shoes as we stepped out of the black SUV. The valet rushed over, but Jin-woo ignored him, tossing the keys. Stay close, he whispered to me. Hold my arm. If I squeeze you, drop to the floor. Reassuring, I muttered, hooking my arm through his. His bicep was rock hard beneath the suit jacket. We walked to the entrance. Two massive bouncers blocked the way. They took one look at Jin-woo, and their faces went pale. They recognized him. The ghost. The cripple. The man who was supposed to be drinking through a straw. Mr. Park, one of them stammered. Move, Jin-woo said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The authority in that single word was absolute. The bouncers stepped aside. We walked into the club. The noise was deafening. Flashing lights. Bodies moving on the dance floor. But as we moved through the crowd, a ripple effect started. People stopped dancing. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that him? I thought he was paralyzed. Who is she? Jin-woo didn't look left or right. He walked straight toward the VIP elevator at the back of the room, dragging me in his wake. We were parting the Red Sea. We reached the elevator. A guard tried to step forward. Jin-woo moved so fast I almost missed it. He grabbed the guard's wrist, twisted, and shoved him against the wall, all without letting go of my arm. Tell my uncle I'm coming up, he said calmly. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing us in silence. I leaned against the mirrored wall, letting out a shaky breath. You just broke that man's wrist. He shouldn't have touched me, Jin-woo said, adjusting his cuffs. He looked at me in the mirror. Ready? No. Perfect. The doors opened on the top floor. It wasn't a club up here. It was a penthouse office. Quiet. Dimly lit. Walls of glass overlooking the city. At the far end of the room, sitting behind a massive desk, was an older man. He had silver hair, neatly combed, and a face that looked like a crinkled map of cruelty. Park Jin-woo. Standing behind him were 4 armed guards. And in the center of the room, kneeling on the floor, was Chioma. Abby, she screamed, struggling against the zip ties on her wrists. She had a bruise on her cheek. Chioma. I surged forward, but Jin-woo's arm tightened like an iron band, holding me back. Easy, he murmured. Sang-chul stood up slowly. He clapped his hands. A slow, mocking applause. A miracle, he said, his voice oily and smooth. Lazarus rises. And he brings a date. He looked at me with cold amusement. The nurse. I must say, nephew, your taste has evolved. Let her go, Jin-woo said. His voice was calm, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. You wanted me. I'm here. You wanted the keys. I have them. He pulled a small black drive from his pocket and held it up. The girl is irrelevant, Jin-woo said. Let her walk out of here, and I give you the drive. Then we settle this like a family. Sang-chul laughed. You think you're in a position to bargain? You're barely standing, Jin-woo. I can see the tremor in your leg. He walked around the desk, pulling a gun from his jacket. He pointed it not at Jin-woo, but at Chioma's head. I stopped breathing. Here is the deal, Sang-chul smiled. You give me the drive. Then I shot the nurse. Then I shoot the sister. And then, maybe I let you live long enough to watch me dismantle your father's legacy piece by piece. Jin-woo didn't blink. If you pull that trigger, the encryption key self-destructs. The servers wipe themselves. You get nothing. No money. No ships. Just a corpse and a bankruptcy filing. Sang-chul hesitated. The greed in his eyes warring with the bloodlust. You're bluffing, Sang-chul sneered. Am I? Jin-woo took a step forward. He released my arm. Abigail. Go to your sister. Jin-woo. I whispered. Go, he commanded softly. Get her up. Move to the elevator. I ran. My heels clicked on the marble. I dropped to my knees beside Chioma. I've got you. I've got you. Abby, he has a gun, Chioma sobbed. I know. Stand up. I pulled her up. Stop. Sang-chul roared, swinging the gun back toward Jin-woo. One more step, and I blow his heart out. I froze, shielding Chioma with my body. Jin-woo stood alone in the center of the room. He looked at the gun pointed at his chest. Then he looked at his uncle. And then he smiled. It was the most dangerous smile I had ever seen. "You're right, uncle," he said. "I am barely standing. My legs are weak." He dropped the flash drive. It clattered onto the floor. "But my aim," Jin-woo said, his hand blurring as he drew his weapon, "is perfect." The room exploded into chaos. The sound of a gunshot in a glass room is deafening. It doesn't sound like a pop, it sounds like the sky cracking open. I didn't see who fired first. I only saw motion. "Get down!" I screamed, shoving Chioma flat against the cold marble floor behind the heavy oak desk. I threw my body over hers, covering her head with my arms, squeezing my eyes shut as the world exploded around us. Bang! Bang! Crash! Glass shattered, a cascading waterfall of sound as the floor-to-ceiling windows decimated under gunfire. Men were shouting. The heavy thud of bodies hitting the floor. The smell of ozone and cordite filled the air, acrid and choking. "Abby!" Chioma was sobbing into the carpet, her body shaking violently beneath mine. "Stay down," I commanded, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, calm, detached, the nurse in the emergency room. "Do not move." I lifted my head just an inch to peek around the edge of the mahogany desk. It was chaos. 2 of Sang-chul's guards were down. The other 2 were scrambling for cover behind leather sofas. And Jin-woo? He was a blur of black suit and lethal precision. He wasn't stationary. He was moving with a fluidity that defied the 6 months of atrophy. He vaulted over a low table, fired 2 shots that took out a guard's knee, and rolled into cover behind a marble pillar. "Kill him!" Sang-chul shrieked, cowering behind his massive chair. "Kill the cripple!" A guard popped up, aiming a submachine gun at the pillar where Jin-woo was hiding. My heart stopped. Jin-woo was pinned. He couldn't move without being cut in half. I didn't think so. I didn't plan. I just reacted. I grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the top of the desk, the only weapon I had. I stood up. "Hey!" I screamed, hurling the decanter with all my strength at the guard. It smashed against the wall inches from the guard's head, spraying him with amber liquor and shards of glass. He flinched, turning his weapon toward me in surprise. That split second was all Jin-woo needed. He stepped out from behind the pillar. His face was a mask of cold, terrifying focus. He fired once. The guard dropped, clutching his shoulder. Now it was just Jin-woo and his uncle. Sang-chul scrambled for the gun he had dropped, his hands shaking. But he was too slow. Jin-woo was there. He didn't shoot. He kicked the gun away, sending it sliding across the room. Then he grabbed his uncle by the lapels of his expensive Italian suit and slammed him back against the panoramic window, the only pane of glass that hadn't shattered. "It's over," Jin-woo snarled, pressing the barrel of his gun under Sang-chul's chin. "You can't kill me," Sang-chul wheezed, sweat pouring down his face. "I'm your blood. I'm family." "You lost the right to that word when you touched her," Jin-woo said. His eyes flicked to me for a fraction of a second. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Blue and red lights began to reflect off the shattered glass on the floor. "The police," Sang-chul sneered. "My police." "Not anymore," Jin-woo said. "The drive I dropped?" It wasn't the encryption key. It was a transmitter. It just broadcasts every file, every murder, every bribe directly to the federal prosecutor's secure server. "They aren't coming to save you, uncle. They're coming to bury you." Sang-chul's face went gray. The fight drained out of him. He sagged against the glass, a defeated old man. Jin-woo stepped back, keeping the gun trained on him. "Abigail," he called out, his voice tight. "I'm here," I said, my voice trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. "Chioma is safe." "Good," he breathed. "That's—" The gun slipped from his hand. "Jin-woo." He swayed. His hand went to his side, to the pristine white shirt that was now soaked in a dark, spreading stain of crimson. "Jin-woo." I ran. I didn't care about the glass slicing my bare feet. I slid onto my knees beside him just as he collapsed. He hit the floor heavy and hard. I rolled him onto his back. His eyes were fluttering, losing focus. Legs, he whispered, a faint ghost of a smile touching his lips. Legs gave out. You're shot, I gasped, tearing open his jacket. The bullet had caught him in the side, just above the hip. It was bleeding sluggishly, but the shock was setting in. You idiot. You absolute idiot. I pressed my hands against the wound, applying pressure. Chioma, get me a tablecloth. Napkins. Anything. My sister scrambled up, grabbing a handful of linen napkins from the bar and tossing them to me. I packed the wound, leaning my entire body weight onto his injury. Stay with me, I commanded, staring into his eyes. You don't get to die. Not after all this drama. Do you hear me, Park Jin-woo? I will not put widow on my resume before I even get a ring. His eyes focused on me. He reached up with a bloody hand, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw. You, look. He wheezed. Devastating. Shut up, I sobbed, tears finally falling, hot and fast, onto his face. Save your breath. The elevator doors pinged open. A SWAT team swarmed into the room, shouting orders. Medic. I screamed, not looking away from him. We need a medic. As the darkness started to take him, Jin-woo kept his eyes on mine, as if I were the only anchor keeping him tethered to the earth. I see you, he whispered. And then his hand fell to the floor. The next 3 days were a blur of fluorescent lights, hospital coffee, and police statements. Chioma was flown back to London immediately, accompanied by a security detail paid for by the Park estate. She was shaken, but safe. We had hugged for an hour before she left, crying and promising to FaceTime every day. I stayed. I sat in the plastic chair next to the bed in the VIP wing of Seoul National University Hospital. I watched the heart monitor beep. I watched the chest rise and fall. The doctors said he was lucky. The bullet had missed the major arteries. But his body was exhausted. The physical trauma of the fight, combined with the months of atrophy, had taken a massive toll. He slept for 2 days. I didn't leave. I washed my face in the bathroom sink. I ate vending machine sandwiches. I hummed sawed quietly when the silence got too loud. On the 3rd morning, rain was lashing against the window. I was dozing in the chair, my head resting on the side of his mattress. I felt fingers in my hair. I jerked awake. Jin-woo was watching me. He looked pale, but the fire was back in his eyes. You're drooling, he rasped. I wiped my mouth quickly, sitting up. I am not. I was monitoring your vitals. With your face. It's a specialized technique. We looked at each other. The jokes faded. The air became heavy with everything we had survived. You stayed, he said softly. Where else was I going to go? He looked away, staring at the rain on the window. You should go, Abigail. The police have Sangchul. The evidence is out. The threat is gone. You're free. You can go back to your life. My life? I asked. You mean my studio apartment and my bad dates and my job where no one looks me in the eye? You deserve better than this, he said, gesturing to himself. I am a man with a lot of enemies, Abigail. I come with baggage. I come with danger. You saw it. I almost got your sister killed. But you didn't, I said firmly. You saved her. You saved me. I am broken, he whispered. Look at me. I lied to you for 6 months. I manipulated you. Yes, you did, I agreed. I stood up and leaned over the bed, forcing him to look at me. And I should hate you. Logic says I should run away and never look back. I reached out and took his hand. It was warm now. Strong. But here's the thing about being invisible, Jin-woo, I said, my voice trembling. You get used to people looking through you. You get used to being a prop in everyone else's story. But with you, even when you were lying, you saw me. You heard me. I squeezed his hand. And I saw you. I saw the man who cried when he thought no one was watching. I saw a man who likes poetry. I saw the man who fought an army for me. He looked at me, his defenses crumbling one by one. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Unless you tell me right now, looking me in the eye, That you don't love me. Silence stretched between us. The heart monitor beeped a steady rhythm. Jin-woo took a breath. He pulled on my hand, dragging me down until our faces were inches apart. I can't, he breathed. I can't say that. Good. Abigail, he said, his voice raw. I don't just love you. You are my breath. You are the reason I stood up. You are the reason I want to keep standing. He closed the distance. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, then firm and claiming. It tasted like antiseptic and rain and pure, unadulterated relief. I kissed him back with everything I had, all the fear, all the anger, all the hope. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Marry me, he whispered. I laughed, a wet, teary sound. You're on painkillers. You're high. I am perfectly lucid, he argued, though his eyes were heavy. Marry me. Let me give you the world. Let me make sure you are never invisible again. I brushed the hair back from his forehead. Ask me again when you can stand up without falling over. Deal, he murmured, his eyes closing. But the answer better be yes. 6 months later. The ocean breeze was warm, carrying the scent of salt and hibiscus. I stood on the terrace of the beach house, looking out at the turquoise water. It wasn't Seoul. It was Jeju Island. Quiet. Remote. Beautiful. Abigail. I turned. Jin-woo was walking up the path from the beach. He wasn't limping. He was walking with a long, easy stride, wearing linen pants and a loose white shirt that flapped in the wind. He looked healthy, vibrant. The shadows were gone from his eyes. He was carrying 2 coconuts. I conquered nature, he announced, handing me one. Or at least, I conquered the local fruit stand. I took the coconut, smiling. My hero. He stepped up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. We looked out at the ocean together. Happy, he asked. Deliriously, I said. Though I miss the city sometimes. It's very quiet here. We can go back, he said. The company is stabilized. The board is begging for me to return as CEO. Maybe, I said. But I like this version of us. I have something for you, he said suddenly. He pulled away. I turned around. He reached into his pocket. But he didn't pull out a ring box. He pulled out a book. It was the first edition of Pablo Neruda's 100 Love Sonnets. Worn. Vintage. Open it, he said. I opened the book. The pages fell open to Sonnet 17. But inside, hollowed out into the pages, was a space. And in that space sat a ring. It wasn't a diamond. It was a sapphire, dark and deep as the ocean, surrounded by black diamonds. Unique. Bold. Unapologetic. Jin-woo got down on one knee. This time, there was no hesitation. No weakness. Just a man choosing his future. I promised I would ask you again when I could stand, he said, looking up at me. The sun caught the silver in his hair. But I think I'd rather kneel. Because you are the one who carries me. My hands flew to my mouth. Abigail Johnson, he said. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of being my wife? Will you let me see you every day, for the rest of my life? The tears came, happy tears this time. The kind that cleanses the soul. Yes, I whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. He stood up and kissed me, lifting me off my feet, spinning me around in the warm island air. I looked over his shoulder at the horizon. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who hid in scrubs, the one who thought she was destined to be a background character. She was gone. I was here. I was held. And for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely seen. If this story touched your heart, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And tell me in the comments, do you believe love can heal us? Thank you for listening, and remember, you are never invisible to the people who are meant to see you. Subscribe for more.